Senator, so it's finally out, an underwhelming 9 pages, at least the public version of the report. What's your initial impressions?
Well, the government has acknowledged that they don't know what these unidentified flying objects are. And so when I started talking about this years ago, people made fun of me, and even my own staff thought I was crazy in talking about it. But in hindsight, I'm glad I did. Certainly, we now know that they have 142 sightings. We know there have been more than that. But it's something that, as far as I'm concerned, this is a preliminary report. And I mean preliminary. There needs to be a tremendous amount of government resources put into this. So we better understand it. So it's not some kind of a fringe part of what government's doing. They've got to dive into this, because we and the American people are entitled to know what the hell's going on.
It does seem to make the case that, look, we're going to underplay this a little bit and be frank with you that we really don't know. I mean, they don't rule out a whole lot. They say about American technology. They leave that option open, but they said, we checked around. As far as we know, it's not ours. It's not ours, is it?
No, I think that we have a good understanding that these vehicles it's not something coming from China, from Russia, from France. It's something that we don't understand. And it's very important that we stop playing around with it and take a look at it. You know, I got $22 million to prove that this wasn't a figment of someone's imagination. I was very curious as to whether there'd be reports of 10 of these, 20 of these, but when we put this thing out to bid and the work was done on it, we found that it was scores and scores, hundreds of sightings of these, and the sightings are unalterable. They are convincing, and we're way behind times. We've got to continue to move, and I am so glad that I got this started.
You know, they had 2 staffers write this report. It's a daunting task. You get 6 months to write a report about a 74-year-old mystery. You do it in part-time. I think they deserve a pat on the back for getting this together in that much time. But clearly, there is a heck of a lot of work still to be done. They need to devote some real resources to it.
Yeah, we need to have the resources that are scientifically based. We need, rather than some bureaucrats trying to piece together information they pick up from press other places, we need to have scientific minds take a look at this and write scientifically, not based on the latest report out of some newspaper around the country or around the world.
There are some really interesting little tidbits hidden in this 9-page report. One of them mentions that there were 18 incidents where our U.S. warplanes had near misses with these things. That would be a reason by itself to get studied and investigated further.
Absolutely true. And, you know, we have situations now where it's more than just the naked eye. The ship, the Omaha, is out there, and people said they saw something. Well, a lot of people discounted that until they looked at their sonar, their radar, there are other ways of capturing pictures. And they certainly determined that it was something out there. It wasn't some imagination of some seaman.
And then, of course, it only looked from 2004 to 2021. All the big, long history of incidents around the world and in our country, that's not part of this. They just didn't have the resources to dig into it.
Yeah, George, we have documented, it's been documented that going back 70 years, there have been valid occurrences that have been reported. And we didn't have time. I guess they didn't have the money, the resources to go back and look that far. But we know that at least 70 years ago, there have been reports of this.
You know, one other thing that jumped out at me is they mentioned specifically for pilots, the stigma associated with this, that it is a real problem in getting pilots to report this because they've been told for so long it's crazy. It's not going to do your career any favors if you're going to report encountering something like that.
And I hand it to the Pentagon. The pilots were afraid to report these things because it would hurt their promotions. And now all the branches of the military, all the branches of the military have said, We want our pilots and our seamen to report everything they see. I hand it to the Pentagon. That's headed in the right direction.
One of the other problems that they sort of acknowledge, they give a little gentle poke in the ribs to the Air Force, which has been remarkably silent for the last 3 years since this came spilling out about the program that you sponsored. The Air Force has said pretty much nothing. They acknowledge that in 2020, the Air Force finally agreed to set up a mechanism where they can do better reporting on it. We look forward to seeing that, wouldn't you?
Yes, I think that the Air Force, because these things are in the air, certainly have a responsibility to not only their own military, but also to the country. They're the ones that should be looking around up in the air, what these things are.
Of course, there's no mention of space aliens, ETs, interdimensionals, any of those more exotic possibilities. Seems to me that is smart on their part to not get into conspiracy theories, crazy stuff, because you want to be serious. You want to have Congress be willing to support it.
It is very important that we keep this scientifically driven. And I repeat, I think it's so important that we look back at what we've been able to establish. And we've established that these, whatever they are, exist. And they've been found in many different ways. And we now have the reportings being done more scientifically rather than just kind of make do.
Right.
Military has done a good job in the last couple of years in telling their pilots to report these. In the past, they had told them to ignore them.
We had learned that there is a second report, the larger report, 10 times the size of this report, that went to Congress, that's classified, that's not going to be released. And I understand why. The sensor information is classified for a really good reason. But it sure would be great to be a fly on the wall and find out what's in that report.
And I think that we must note and continue to note and advocate for the fact that this should be ongoing. This shouldn't be a one and only, it's over with. We need to continue working on this, and because this one cursory report is not enough. The American people are interested. This is not some figment of someone's imagination. It's something that's really going on. We have reports from virtually every place, and we need to make sure we are doing something to follow up on them.
Do you have an idea about a program, what a permanent program could look like and where it belongs? If it is only in the military, there's a big segment of the population that's not going to trust them to be transparent. Where could that house? Where could it be housed?
I think that NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, should be heavily involved in this. It doesn't have to be from the Pentagon. I think NASA could do a good job of helping with this.
Would you support the idea of some sort of a public involvement, meaning citizen organizations, something like BASS that you helped fund before?
Well, citizens are going to be involved. You can't stop it. This is something that people are really interested in. You know, I've been involved in a lot of stuff in my government service, but I can go here on the Strip, go in an elevator, and somebody say, "You're Harry Reid?" I said, "Yes." And they will say to me, 9 times out of 10, "Thanks for doing work." They'll say on flying saucers normally, but I get the point. People are really interested in this. And as I've said, I spent a lot of time in government, and all my staff and others told me to stay away from this. And in spite of that, I went ahead and did it. And I'm glad I did, because I think it's something that's extremely important to the future of not only America, but the world.
One last question. You know, I think UFO investigators, the UFO public is going to be disappointed that they've been waiting for something that ends up being 9 pages. But to me, this is a huge step forward for our military to take it on, for Congress to admit that this is a legitimate mystery and we need to solve it, and to suggest that we need an ongoing study. That's a big day for this topic, for this subject.
Even though people are disappointed in how little they got, they should be very happy that this is a program that's gotten started, and people like me are talking about making sure it's continued.
Senator, thank you very much.